Hi friends, welcome back to the Southern Homestead. The sun is shining, the snow is melting, and today we're going to spend some time in the kitchen. It is 5 days after Snowpocalypse 2025. We still have a little bit of snow on the ground, if you can see behind me. The last of it is melting. And today we're going to spend some time in the kitchen. We might do a little baking or cooking, but I need to make some more beeswax wraps, and I thought I'd share my process with you. While we'll be in the kitchen, we're not going to be baking something you can eat. I'm going to be making some beeswax wraps. You don't need a whole lot of materials or ingredients. You do need to make sure that you're going to be using old pans or old bowls, because the ingredients that we're using are beeswax and pine resin, which are very, very sticky and very hard to get out of things. So don't use your good bowls. As you can see here, I have an old pan that I only use for this process. I have some of my own rendered beeswax from here on the farm. We do have beehives, and I rendered this last summer. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it or not. I may save this and instead use it in some of my other products that I make. And I may use, right here, you can see I've ordered some beeswax pellets. I may end up using that instead. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I have an old bowl that I only used for this project. And then I'm also going to use some jojoba oil. And I almost forgot the pine resin. And then you're going to need some cotton fabric, cut to whatever size that you're going to want your wraps. Because I'm a quilter, I always have pre-cut fabrics on hand. Cotton, of course. So I just grabbed this stack. It's called a layer cake. It's 10 by 10. And I'm just going to pull a few out of here and use this. And then I have this silicone brush that I'm going to use to actually paint on the wax and resin mixture. We're going to start by preheating the oven, and we're going to set it at about 175 to 200, somewhere in that range. I'm also going to get my double boiler system set up, and I put a couple of inches of water in the bottom, and then I've got my bowl that's going to go over the top. So I will say this, never underestimate pine resin. It's very sticky. So use gloves. I have just some disposable gloves. I hate wearing disposable gloves. Even as a nurse, when I worked the floor many, many years ago, I despise it. Do you want to know why? I have very small hands, and gloves never fit. Even the smalls don't fit. Do you see this? Look at all this. And, you know, it'll get the job done. It'll protect my hands, keep them from getting sticky. But I feel that it affects my manual dexterity when you're trying to do things and work with things. So I'm going to do my best to function. But I hate wearing gloves. So the first thing you're going to do, you're going to measure out your beeswax, and I decided to go ahead and go with the pellets. You need 50 grams of the beeswax pellets. You need about 10 grams of the pine rosin. So I've measured that out, and I'm going to add it to the beeswax, which is already in my double boiler. And you also need about 1.5 teaspoons of jojoba oil. If you don't have that, you can use olive oil. Okay, so while our beeswax and pine resin mixture is melting, I took a regular baking sheet and put 4 of my 10 by 10 fabric squares on the pan and put them in the oven. I'm just going to get them warm so that they can absorb the mixture more efficiently. So I put those into the oven, and then the pan that I'm going to actually use to lay the squares in and paint them down with the beeswax mixture, I took that pan, I lined it with foil, and we're ready to go. Okay, so I have one of the fabric squares that I've taken out of the oven. I've got my beeswax and rosin mixture here. And we're just gonna start painting it on. Make sure you get your edges really well. And you can see it's already hardening on the sheet itself, but that's okay. It's gonna go back into the oven, and this wax mixture is gonna melt and hopefully get into any spots I've missed. Just gonna lay it out on some aluminum foil, nice and flat, until it completely hardens. And we're gonna do this step for each one of our wraps. That's all there is to it. There are our 4 10-inch by 10-inch beeswax wraps. Once they have cooled, you're just going to fold them however you want and store them in a drawer. And then when you need to cover a bowl or half of an orange, you've got your wraps ready to go. Now that I have my beeswax wraps completed, I'm going to mix up some elderberry tea for us to have on hand. We have an elderberry grove here on the property, and every summer we harvest all of the berries that we can, if the birds have left us any, and we put them in Ziploc bags in the freezer, and then throughout the winter months we'll use them to make our own homemade elderberry syrup. Now I make it for family and friends as well, and once we do that, there's always leftover berry mash, what we call it. And we don't want that to go to waste. There's still plenty of medicinal properties in the elderberry mash. So what I like to do is I lay them out on my silicone mats, place it in my dehydrator, and dry the leftover berry mash, and load them up in mason jars, and then we use it in a special blend that I make for hot tea. And I'm going to share that with you here today. This is a jar of my dehydrated elderberry mash. So these berries have already been used to make elderberry syrup, and then I've dehydrated the leftover berries and store them in the jar. So I'm going to show you what they look like. So this is my jar of elderberry tea, and as you can see, it's just the old used berries that have been dehydrated. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna take a cup of the dehydrated elderberry. I'm just gonna break apart some of the bigger clumps that are in here. And then to this, we're going to add about a 1/4 cup of whole cloves. We're going to add about 3 to 5 star anise. And then we're going to add some cinnamon sticks. Now, I took 5 regular size cinnamon sticks, and then I cut them in half, or broke them in half. So there's going to be 10 of the cinnamon sticks. I normally would add dehydrated orange slices to this, but I don't have any. And I have no oranges in the house. So what we're going to do is just go with it. And we're going to add everything into our mason jar. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and scoop some of the tea blend into our tea diffuser. And I have this cute, adorable little pewter teapot one that my husband got me. I think it was made in Canada. And tea is really a good option if you're not a fan of elderberry syrup. Now, because it won't fit in the tea diffuser, I'm gonna go ahead and add a cinnamon stick and one of my star anise. Okay, so we're gonna let the tea steep for about 10 minutes. So that's why I've covered the top. We wanna keep the heat in. To get the full medicinal properties from the berries and the other ingredients like cloves and cinnamon, you really need to steep it for a good 10 minutes. After the tea is finished steeping, we add at least a teaspoon of some of our raw honey from right here on the property. And that's it, nothing to it. Delicious and healing medicinal elderberry tea. Thanks for joining us on the Southern Homestead, friends. We'll see you next time.